A young teenage girl named Vada gets ready for school, and as usual, she drives off with her best friend Nick. While Vada is in a class, her younger sister Amelia texts her, claiming there is an emergency. Naturally, Vada gets worried, so she excuses herself and goes outside to call her sister. It turns out that Amelia is panicking since she has just gotten her first period, and upon hearing this, Vada comforts her by saying that it's normal and that there is nothing to be anxious about. Next, Vada walks to the restroom and notices her classmate Mia, who is one of the most popular girls in school and a talented dancer. As they chat, they are startled by the sound of gunshots coming from inside the school. They immediately hide inside the restroom stall in case the shooter approaches them. The girls start shivering in fear as the sound of gunshots is heard again and again and again. And a few seconds later, a guy named Quentin enters the bathroom with blood all over his clothes. Distraught with the incident, he informs them that his elder brother has been fatally shot. The three then experience the 6 most terrifying minutes of their lives while the gunfire continues in the school, and after the damage has been done, the police finally arrive. Following this, Vada is traumatized by the incident and isolates herself. She cries most of the time and has frequent flashbacks to the day her friends got killed. Her family tries to console her, but Vada rarely talks with them and often locks herself in. Amelia also tries to cheer her up, but she ignores her as well and wants to stay alone. Later that night, Mia follows Vada on Instagram and shares her phone number. Since Mia is the only one who knows her pain, Vada texts her and they start talking about how they are dealing with the situation. Mia informs her that her parents are in Japan and she is alone in the house. She then invites Vada to her home if she needs someone to talk to or hang out. A few days later, Vada goes to see her best friend Nick. Her mother is relieved that Vada is finally leaving the house after several days, and seeing her mother happy, Vada also lies and tells her that she is feeling good. Then she meets Nick at a park, who was in the classroom at the time of the shooting. Nick tells her that they have survived for a reason and that they should now educate others to avoid similar incidents in the future. However, Mia pays little attention to his words and continues to be buried in her thoughts. In the next scene, we see Vada watching Mia's dancing videos on Instagram, while Amelia and her mother are watching the news. Nothing stimulates Vada's mind right now, so she gets up and goes to visit Mia. When she gets there, Mia welcomes her in and reveals that her parents are artists and are often out of the country. As they settle in, the girls discuss the shooting incident, and Vada mentions that she's been having nightmares lately. Then Vada says that she will attend Quentin's brother's funeral the following day, and Mia decides to come along as well. The next day, when Mia and Vada attend the funeral, Quentin expresses his gratitude and thanks them for visiting. After returning home, Vada looks at the pictures of those victims and becomes depressed. She spends her time crying and often gets shivers. Since that day, Vada and Mia start hanging out a lot more as they understand each other's suffering. While spending time with her, Vada realizes that Mia is a lonely girl with wealthy parents who do not give her much attention. Mia's primary passion in life is dancing, but she reveals that she hasn't been able to attend her dance class since the incident. When Mia inquires about Vada's parents, she reveals that they are supportive. However, she does not discuss much with them as they become overly anxious and stressed. That night, Mia and Vada are watching a movie together, but Mia starts to doze off. When Vada tries to leave, Mia asks her to wait until she falls asleep for her to feel safe. Later, on her way home, Mia calls Nick and apologizes for not being able to meet him recently. She claims that she needs some time to process this because she's been going through a rough patch. Nick, on the other hand, reveals that he's become an activist against weapons and is working to ensure the safety of the schools. The following morning, Nick calls Vada to tell her he is returning to school. When Vada's mother hears this, she encourages her daughter to return to school as well. However, Vada says that it has just been 2 weeks since the incident and she does not want to return to school until she feels better. Hearing this, her mother recommends that she visit a therapist so that it may help her to overcome the trauma. Next, Vada visits a therapist named Anna, whom her mother set up for her. She initially tries to appear normal, claiming that she is very excellent at regulating her emotions. However, Anna is a professional, and she believes that Vada must properly process her emotions to let go of the horrible memory. She then hands Vada a worksheet and tells her to write her emotions and mood on it. After the session, Vada returns home and she receives a message from Quentin. He thanks her for attending his brother's funeral once again and asks if she is free to meet. They later meet at a coffee shop to discuss how they've been holding up. Seeing him emotionally shattered, Vada hugs Quentin and promises that things will get better. Next, Vada goes to Mia's house where they smoke weed and have drinks together, and after the sesh, she reaches home hungry. and begins looking for food. Her mother approaches her and complains that she rarely spends time with her family. She then asks Vada to return to school because the longer she ignores reality, the harder it will be for her. But Vada gets irritated at her mother and storms to her room. She calls Mia and says that her mother has been pressuring her to return to school. When Vada inquires about Mia's plans, she responds that her parents have given her permission to be homeschooled for as long as she likes. The next morning, Vada finally returns to school after being persuaded by her mother. They are now metal tested at the door, and the trainers teach them how to survive in the event of another threat. However, all of this becomes too much for her to bear, so she leaves the room. But Vada still can't bring herself to enter the bathroom where she hid from the shooter at school, and on her walk home, when Vada steps on a can, the noise scares her, causing her to pee herself. The next day, Vada buys ecstasy from a drug dealer to get through the school day. She then gets high in class and ends up with ink all over her face. Vada excuses herself and goes outside, but begins to roll down the stairs. Immediately, she texts Nick for help, and he takes her away before anyone notices her. Later at home, Vada receives a call from Quentin, who claims that she texted him multiple times while she was high. To freshen her mood, she invites Quentin to her house to see a movie together. He arrives a few moments later, and they have a good time together. However, their meeting is cut short when Quentin suddenly says he has a family issue and leaves her house. After this, Vada puts on makeup and informs her parents that she'll be studying at Nick's house. However, she goes to Mia's house, where they get high and start dancing on the road. When they get home, one thing leads to another, and they end up getting intimate. The next morning, Vada gets up early and sneaks out of the house while Mia is still sleeping. As soon as she gets home, her family is furious at her, as they were trying to contact her all night. Vada asks her mother to relax, saying she was at Nick's home, but it turns out Nick has been looking for her as well. Vada eventually confesses that she was drunk last night and stayed at Mia's house, leaving her mother in disbelief. Later, Vada goes to meet Nick, but it seems like he is also angry at her. When she asks him why he ratted her out to her mother, Nick explains he was worried about her. He was concerned because the last time he saw her, she was high on drugs, and he thought she would do something to harm herself. Nick claims that he's been trying to reach her for the past month, but she has only avoided him. He claims that Vada does not make any effort to feel better, and instead, she spends most of her time getting high with Mia. They then get into a brief argument, and Vada gets frustrated and leaves the house. In the next scene, Vada meets Quentin and complains about how Nick does not understand her at all. But on the other hand, Quentin tries to tell her that things have been difficult for Nick as well, as he is doing everything he can to raise awareness against gun violence. After chatting for a while, Vada feels a little relieved and she ends up kissing Quentin. However, he refuses her advances and states that, while he likes her, he is not ready for an emotional connection at this time. Vada feels embarrassed about this and quickly runs away. Just then, she receives a message from Mia asking whether she is mad at her, but she does not respond. Later that night, Vada is crying in her room when Amelia enters and snuggles with her. She expresses how she put Vada in danger by calling her right before the shooting, causing her to leave her classroom and putting her in more danger. The little girl thinks that this is why Vada has been ignoring her ever since the incident, and upon hearing this, Vada realizes how much trauma she is projecting toward her sister and says that it is not her fault. She then admits that the only person she could think about during the shooting was Amelia, and says that she is very important to her. The sisters then tearfully hug each other and reconcile. The next day, Vada climbs to the top of the hill along with her father. There, they both scream out their frustrations, and she finally admits how much she had been bottling in her feelings. She feels better after this and decides to go to Mia's house. Later, Vada discovers Mia unconscious in her sauna, surrounded by empty wine bottles. Mia believes that Vada hates her after they got intimate, but Vada assures her that she can never hate her. The following day, Vada attends her therapy session again, and this time, she shows real progress. She tells Anna that her best friend Nick is upset with her and that she misses him terribly. She then begins to cry as she recalls the shooting incident, and she slowly starts to feel better. At home, Vada approaches her mother and apologizes for ignoring her all this time. Following a heartfelt conversation, Vada also reveals her relationship with Mia and what happened between them. In the final scene, Vada waits for Mia outside of her dance class, and the two have an easy, somewhat flirty text exchange. Vada appears to be happy after a long time, and she seems to be ready to move on with her life. Just then, she receives news on her phone notifying her that a school shooting in Ohio had killed 12 students. She stares at her phone in disbelief, then begins to hyperventilate. The movie comes to an end as we listen to the sounds of Vada's panic attack.